Hey, this is Mike Matthews from MuscleForLife.com, and I have Roger Law on today's podcast, and he is from Rog Law. Or you say Rog or Raj?
Raj, like R-A, like almost
figured.
like Indian Raj or Raj.
Yeah, when someone first told me it said Rog Law, I'm like, his name's Roger. It's probably Raj Law.
Who said that? Okay, you can't out.
It was actually a friend of mine. He was the guy that recommended that I contact with. So.
All right, well, whoever that is, when you're listening, come talk to me. We got to talk about this.
So Rog Law Fitness, just met him just recently. Very cool guy. Knows what he's talking about. You spend most of your time training your online clients. You said, Raj, and then you do some writing for your website and do some writing on other websites and stuff, right?
Yep, definitely. I actually just transitioned away from mainly in-person training. So I was doing that for the last 4 years.
Okay.
So as of October of 2013, I stopped training in person, at least for the majority of my income. I still train people occasionally in person. But it's not something I go out of my way. If I do it, it's for someone that, I just want to do it for the enjoyment of it versus the money I'm getting. So
sure.
Yeah.
But I understand that. So just in case the listeners haven't heard of you, aren't familiar with you, tell me a little bit of your story. So, like, what motivated you to get fit? How did it start for you? And what brought you to where you're at now?
So we're going way back in the day. So I was a completely non-athletic kid growing up. I was shockingly unathletic.
You didn't play any sports or anything?
Loosely. So I played. Does t-ball count? Is it like, I don't know that. I played t-ball. I played kickball. I played recess, and then once that ended, I didn't do anything until high school. For one season, I did like track and field, but essentially, my whole life I was a video game kid. So I was sitting behind a desk just on the computer or in bed playing PlayStation for hours and pretty much doing a whole lot of nothing. So
I did a bit of that. I was like, when I was 14, the year of being 14 was just playing a lot of video games. And then like 15, 16, I started to be like, wait a minute, I like girls, so I'm gonna go do that instead of video games.
See, that's what saved you. I didn't realize that. I mean, I knew I liked girls, but I thought what I was doing would get them. I mean, I thought they loved. You should
have moved to Korea. If you're in Korea, then you would have been a superstar.
I'd be the man. I'd be in those stadiums just making all that money. But essentially, I didn't really start weight training until
You'd be a giant. You'd be like some kind of superhero.
That would be now, all right, I'm quitting fitness. I'm going to Korea. This podcast is done.
Pro gamer. You're welcome.
It's funny how back in the day you were just a nerd if you played games, but now you're an athlete over in Korea.
Yeah, I know.
A guy got his
even over now. Esports is growing over here. It's like, I mean, obviously it's not mainstream, but there are some of these bigger video games, some of these big online games. The productions are getting more and more professional in terms of like these big tournaments where you have like multi-million-dollar prize purses and stuff. Yeah,
this guy actually he avoided military service in Korea by applying to the United States, and he's the first sponsored e-athlete. So he's over here playing for. I'm like, man, where was that when I was playing games free? But yeah, man, essentially I didn't start training until 2007, working out.
Yeah.
Like, let's say for more than a few weeks on end,
serious until.
Yeah, like my first encounter with weights was like a 15-pound dumbbell I had in my basement, and I was just curling just for just reps and reps. I was like, clearly if I do this, I'll get a bicep, and if I get one bicep, I can get two, and if I get two, this girl will like me. And it didn't work out that way, but and then I
more for years. Biceps.
Exactly. I'm like, I don't know where. I'm sure I know where I got that from, just movies and TV, but but until 2007 was when I kind of started training, and that was because I had a bit of a health scare at the time. So essentially, all the years of just eating fast food and sitting around playing video games and not moving much, caught up to me. And I wasn't overweight. I'd say like 210, 211 pounds, but I went for a physical. Yeah, so I was like, I'm tall, so I can get away with it. But I went to I got my physical, and the doctor was like, all right, well, everything's good except for your cholesterol. And it was like 300 something. So I was like, oh, that's not good. I should probably do something. And the mistake I made was telling my mom, because she immediately thought I was going to die.
Yeah, she's
next
like,
day.
Heart attack imminent.
Yeah, and that was, and right after that, it's like everything I eat, she's like, oh, does that have cholesterol in it? Does that help? I'm like, damn it, okay. So I got to do something. Because it was high to the point where they wanted to put me on statins, which, you know, I didn't know anything about statins back then. I was just a guy that wanted to be healthy. But in doing my research, I just found a lot of dubious stuff on it, so I'm glad I didn't go that route. So trying to avoid that is what led me to fitness. So have you heard of precision nutrition?
It does sound familiar, but I don't know what they're. I feel like I've been on their website, but no details are coming to mind.
Oh man, okay. So it's essentially a online nutrition and training company that just puts out info and content and stuff like that. But back in 2008, they launched their what's called a lean eating program. So it was an online coaching program for 6 months.
Okay.
And what that was, essentially, you know, is a group of people, I think it started out about 50 or 100 guys, and they all come in and they just get coached on habits and fitness, and they get workouts for that whole 6 months. And it's essentially a transformation program with habits built as the backbone of that. So I signed up for that, and man, it was intense, because before then I was just dicking around in the gym. And I was just hopping around from program to program, not knowing what I was doing. And then I found some structure with that. And what that gave me is it was my first formal introduction to weight training and nutrition. And at the end of that 6 months, I lost about 20 pounds, and my cholesterol dropped a bit. It wasn't what I thought it would be, but it was a start. It was my start that got me into training, like, consistently for the long term. And I was like, oh, this is pretty good. Can we swear on here? Is this?
I mean, I don't know. I guess sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I don't know what. I don't even know. I don't know what the rules are even on iTunes or anything.
Well, the shit just felt great. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. This, you know, you change your body, change your mindset, and everything starts to fall into place after that. So that was really how I got into training myself, and then I used that experience to help others. Like, based on that, I applied for an internship at Cressy Performance in Hudson, Mass. And surprisingly, I got that. I still don't know how, but I did, and that just led down the road of training other people. I had the best first introduction to fitness that I could have even ever imagined, and then ever since then I've just been trying to pay it forward in terms of experience I had and trying to give it to other people. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's great. In these last few years, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced in terms of fitness, and what's helped you overcome them?
Oh, so in terms of like my own personal struggles?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I'd say initially it was really just the internet. There was so much stuff on there that I hopped around and. Okay, so have you heard of the Anabolic Diet? I'll start there.
No, I mean it sounds like every other scammy piece of shit. Oh. But I don't know what it is. But if it's called the Anabolic Diet, I probably won't like it.
It hooked me so hard. So essentially, it's like a low carb during the week. And and on the weekends you get to carb up. And
so it's just a carb cycling-esque thing.
Yeah, but it's like that. But the way that I understood it, it wasn't like that at all. It's like they made it seem like the mecca of diets.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's
and I bought, and that was my first introduction. I bought into it, and it just, during the week I'd be low carb, but I eat all the fats I could, blah, blah, blah. Then weekends, just cereal and cakes and this and that. And it was just hopping around from stuff like that.
The secret to getting shredded.
Yeah, it's like I felt like I was missing out on something. And
yeah, it's kind of funny that low carb is so trendy right now and high fat is so trendy, and there's a lot of these diets all revolving around. It's mainly because testosterone as a subject right now is very hot and popular. Doctors are prescribing TRT like crazy. Everybody. I mean, you could be 22 years old and go to a doctor and be like, I think I have low T. He's like, I think so too. Here's your prescription. Like, thank you, bye. So it's just because it's very, trendy right now. And then you have a little bit of research that shows like going from a low fat diet to a high fat diet can increase free T. But if you actually look at it like, you can expect maybe a 10 to 15% increase, which is 100% irrelevant when you're talking about natural. That's just so what? You go from 500 or 600 NGDL to 600 or 700 NGDL. Does that matter? Not at all. That's not going to make you stronger. It's not going to help you build more muscle. The benefits in terms of fat loss, if you're cutting, is going to be negligible. Maybe you'll feel it a little bit. Maybe you'll be a little bit more energetic. Maybe your libido will be a little bit boosted. But it's all in all, it's just irrelevant. And when you cut out carbs from your training, you're missing out on a lot. You're missing out on the performance benefit. When your muscles are full of glycogen, you can push more weight. You can train harder and longer in the gym. And then there's also, the insulin response that comes with carbs. Yeah, insulin's not anabolic, but it's anti-catabolic. And when we're looking at muscle growth, when you look at net proteins like turnover, you want protein synthesis and you want as little protein degradation as possible. And the elevated insulin levels help keep the protein degradation in check, which is why, I talk about this in a couple articles on my website. I cite 2 or 3 different studies that just show definitively that higher carb diets help you build more muscle over time. It's just 100% proven, and it's known. The people that know what they're doing, they know that. And when I speak to people that, it depends, though, on the drugs, of course. If somebody is on enough drugs, then it doesn't matter. Like, they can, get a little bit of the fat loss boost that may or may not come with carbs, depends on your body, and let the drugs make sure that they even build muscle. It doesn't matter, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But when you're natural, carbs are your friend. They're, you eat enough fats for your basic that your body needs to just, maintain hormone levels and maintain cellular integrity and whatever. But then, high carb, even when you're cutting, like, I don't know if you still do low carb, but I never do. Like, even if I'm cutting, like to get into a photo shoot where I'm, maybe 6%, my carbs, I just did that recently, and my carbs I ended my cut at, I think it was like 170 grams a day, and I ended my weight at about 182. Yep.
I think there's so much dogma out in in magazine. I think magazines are getting a bit better, and I think everything is getting a bit better, actually. But the fitness space is getting so crowded that people are trying to make a name for themselves by just saying absurd things. They're like, if you eat
being
carbs,
contrarian,
being
contrarian, it gets attention.
It's like the rap game. It's like when 50 Cent first came out. It's like that. He just started talking crap about everybody just to get a name, and it worked.
Yeah.
So there's something to it, but you have to think about those people that latch on to that misinformation, it's just out of ignorance. And I don't say ignorance to talk down to someone, but they just don't know what they don't know, and they think,
it's not stupidity, just not knowing.
Yeah, and it's the carb thing is one of my biggest, I guess, issues, because whenever I speak with someone that's not really into training or into working out, they just like, I'm going to cut my carbs. So that'll do it. I'm like, okay. I in that conversation, like when they say that to me, there's 2 ways I can go. There's that way where I can explain to them and try and talk and try and inject a new idea, a new belief, or a new option to consider into their mind, or that left option where I just go, just cut the carbs, and then just run away. Because if someone believes something, odds are they're not going to change their belief unless they want to. And it's unfortunate because a lot of people end up making this whole fitness thing a lot harder than it needs to be, just based off all the misinformation they have. They don't know that it's misinformation. You know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, you had mentioned, before we got on the podcast that the whole fake guru thing is something you wanted to kind of dive into. So tell me, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and it's, I wouldn't even necessarily say fake guru. Well, okay, let's start there.
I mean, they kind of are.
Yeah, definitely. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, that is a good term. But there are.
Let's start with how a lot of these people look themselves. Mm-hmm. If you can't walk the walk yourself, why would anyone it's a question that has come up for me many times. Like, I'll see some of these guys, like, why would anyone listen to this person? Look at him. It looks like he's been lifting for 6 months. Like, what? If a person, there are only a handful of people that I would say that maybe they don't look the look so much, but they know their shit. Like Lyle McDonald. Lyle McDonald doesn't have a physique, but he knows his shit, and his proof is in the results of his clients. Like, and also, I mean, you read his work. Like, he's just one of the smartest guys in this industry. Yeah. But there is that out there. But for the most part, it's like, if you're thinking about taking, I mean, it's okay if you're just skimming someone's article on how to get motivated for working out. Okay, fine, whatever. But if you're seriously considering taking, dietary or training advice, like if you're going to base your training or your nutrition on someone's advice, I mean, I would at first, would you want to look like that person? Is that what you're going for? Are you impressed by that person's physique? If not, it doesn't mean they don't know what they're talking about. That's not, but it's definitely a red flag. Like, why is this person, why does he not, does he even do what he says? Like, if he does it not work? You know what I mean?
Yep. I think that's where the internet meme, do you even lift, comes from. It's kind of like that. And, there's definitely something to that, because you can really, and this goes to, the thing I want to talk about with gurus is that when you're talking with someone that really knows or really walks the walk, there's a sense of, like, wisdom to them versus just, I got all these. It's like it would be comparing, like, let's say you have two lecturers and there's one guy, he's got a bunch of papers in his hand and he's flipping through all of them because he has all this information, but he hasn't lived it. He hasn't really done anything with it. He hasn't trained or done anything with that information versus someone else who's just off the cuff, and the information they're conveying, they've done it themselves. They have experience teaching it or taking others through it, and they have this sense of ease, and they're just more chill. They're not as high-strung or feeling out that they have something to prove. It's more just like, hey, I'm not here to tell you how to or what to believe. I'm just conveying my experience to you. I'm not trying
to convert you to my religion.
Right, yeah. And
I'm just... that makes me think of these PubMed warriors, right? So, like, I'm actually very interested in the scientific side of what we do, and I read a lot of papers, and I link to a ton of science in my articles. It's just one of the things I like to do, just because it, I think, helps just establish. It helps show that I'm not just trolling the internet, like, collecting tips and throwing it into an article. You know what I mean? Right. And me and myself, like, if someone doesn't have that scientific slant, for the most part, I'm not even going to listen to what they have to say, because in a lot of cases they're just not going to know what they're talking about, or maybe they'll know in certain things. Like, through experience they may have learned some things, but just because something works to some degree doesn't mean it's the optimal way to do things, and we can kind of look to science for that. But on the flip side, you have a lot of people that are like, you can call them like PubMed warriors or PubMed trolls, where they themselves don't even lift, or they've never, they weigh 130 pounds, but they spend all this time reading through papers and trying to collate and correlate, and they'll argue. It's just pure theoretical argument. And, like, there are things, like, for instance, the whole idea that the 10 to 12 rep range is the key to hypertrophy, and that's where you should be training if you want to build bigger muscles. And if you train in anything less than probably like the 6 to 8 rep range, you're not going to get bigger, you're only going to get stronger. That you can make that argument. I could write that article and cite quite a bit of science that would make that argument. And if somebody were reading it, it would be persuasive.
Yeah.
But it's completely false. And when you actually dig into that, you begin to wonder, how did this myth even find its way into literature? And you know, a fair amount of these studies are also, it's like, just because somebody did a bunch of elbow extensions or you know, one leg extensions, like 50 reps with 30% of their 1 rep max, you can't extrapolate the results of that study into a long-term like training routine. Like, you give me anyone and you put them on those machines and have them work with 30% of their 1 rep max, and then I'm going to take someone and I'm going to put him and he's going to squat heavy, he's going to deadlift heavy, bench, military press heavy, and let's see where those guys are at in 6 months, and let's see who's built more muscle and who's bigger, you know, and who's stronger. My guy will destroy the other guy, but it's a bit harder to find scientific evidence of that, and you have to really dig, and you have to. It's not easy, and I have an article on my website where I kind of do go into it, but that's just an example of where I'll have people write me where they're not even trying to be argumentative, they just haven't done it, they've never really built any muscle or strength, but they have all these studies, and this study says that you should be training 10 to 12 rep, and this study says that, you know, compound lifting isn't that important, and this study says that if you want to lose fat, you should be training in a higher rep range. But then when you actually put these things into practical use, it doesn't play out. It doesn't work. Yep.
Oh man, it's so true, and a lot of people can get lost in this world of theory and science, and then they end up living there, and they don't end up doing any actual training or exploring any of the ideas they just quote as truth. And that's that's the dangerous part of the science, the science route, I get, or just the people that are only focused on that. Some, you know, like the best in the business, like someone I really look up to is Brad Schoenfield. He takes that science and then he goes to apply it and see how it works, and he's open to the result. He's like, if the science says one thing but his results say something else, he's open to that. But some people, they just look at the science and they go, well, it's true, that's it, and then they haven't even tested it out themselves, or it's like 2 a.m. on Google, they're in their underwear and they see it and they go, all right, science says it's true, it is true, I saw it on the internet, and it's just this great Steve Martin quote, and it refers back to this whole thing. He says, talking about music is like dancing about architecture. It's like you can talk about all the studies you want, but you have to apply you have to do something. And that's why I really like training is a great, you know, analogy for life is if you want life, you have to do something. If you want to change your physique or something, you have to put in action. You can't just be all theory and, you know, the secret. You can't the secret your way into the body you want, you know. I can't just attract a great physique. Man, I've been trying. I've been sitting in my room for like 2 days and like, if I just visualize it when I wake up in the morning, you don't even know how ripped I'm going to be. And it didn't work, but I think I just got to think of positive thoughts about it more. But and just going about guruism, and you know, you have those people, but I think just the term guru is just it's a dirty title. It's like I personally don't want to be seen as a guru, and if like I've had some people call me that, and it was just weird. I felt like I should be wearing robes, and I should have these days now it's like we've lost the Hindu as now it's like you should be trying to sell them, you know, a thousand different products, and you should be the one saying that you've unlocked the secrets of anabolic dieting and. Yep, and that's dangerous, man. Because and the thing about guruism is just it's all posturing. It's you know, who can appear to be that, and then once you appear to be that, anyone that sees you that doesn't know better, they're like, oh, that guy's a shit. He knows what he's talking about. Why do I know that? I don't. He got a nice website. He's got all of this and that, and then they cling on to that, and I think the danger with that for like the average trainee or people that are just getting into like training is they don't have any experience on their own, so they rely on this one person. Like they'll cling on, like this is my dude. I don't even read anything else but by this guy, and they cling on to that, and then they kind of disengage themselves from their own experience. Like when I first started, I barely read anything by anyone that when I was first starting out, it's like, oh, okay, well, I got me to one point, but then I started taking the next steps on my own, and that led me away from that original source material from when I first started, because the thing about it is if you don't get away from that, depending on someone or thinking someone has the secret for you is that you don't learn to trust yourselves, and you're just always dependent on someone else's input or guidance for your own development, which is scary. It's like a slippery slope.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I try in my work, one thing I really try to do is teach people the underlying physiology of how everything works. So then it's not my secret proprietary system. I mean, it's like, my weightlifting advice is this is the weightlifting advice that goes back to Arnold's days. Like, you have to focus on heavy compound lifting. You have to know what you're doing with your diet. It's all just numbers. Micronutrients do matter, like healthy foods do matter, but it's not in terms of body composition. You can eat the healthiest foods in the world and be fat and have no idea what's wrong, just because you're eating too many calories every day. And then there's also that's the physical side, and like you said, it is very simple. And then there's the internal stuff of being patient, even when you're doing everything right. Don't get sucked into, speaking of gurus, don't get sucked into the ridiculous transformations that you see on the internet, which, if you're going to take 10 grams of drugs a week like that dude, sure, you can go from nothing to shredded in a year, like huge, lean, whatever. But when you're natural, setting realistic expectations, like if you're new to weightlifting, you should be able to, if you're a guy, if you put on 20 to 25 pounds of muscle in your first year, that's amazing. That's the best you're going to do, really. Yeah. And if that's 15, that's still actually a pretty good first year. But in terms of how that looks, that's a dramatic difference, but that's not that when a lot of guys, when they're getting into weightlifting, usually the look that, in my experience, the look that they want requires that they gain probably 30 to 35 pounds of muscle, maybe 25 to 35, and be about maybe 8 to 9% body fat seems to be the general look that guys, that when they start, that's really what they're going for. Mm-hmm. And guys need to realize that takes, it takes a couple years to do that. It takes no less than 2 years to do that.
Yeah.
With the best, it doesn't matter what training program you're following. It doesn't, with an optimal training program and really sticking to your diet, more or less the entire time, which means that you're eating the right amounts of foods and you're not dragging your cuts out for too long and you're not destroying yourself on your bulks, you're doing it right. It takes time. So you have that, that patience factor, and then not getting all OCD and body dysmorphic about it as well. And which is another thing that you had said you wanted to kind of mention or wanted to go over, is kind of keeping it fun, which definitely is an important point for just maintaining, not just compliance, but mental balance, I guess you could say.
Yeah, definitely, because and this goes back to what you were just saying, is that you have to. It's a long haul.
Yep.
And if you
the reward is big though. People should realize that you do that, you work hard for that 2, maybe 3 years, and you can enjoy yourself along the way. It's not like you're going to hate the journey.
Right.
But if you come into that knowing that is the journey, that's what it's going to take. But then you come out the other end with the physique that you want. You now look, the way that you want to look for whatever reason that is. And along the way, if a lot of us started out, I started working out to impress girls. That was, a simple, stupid reason to start. And now I like to do it just because I like to lift. I just like it. It's just an enjoyable activity. It has become just a staple of my life. And I'm married, and it has nothing to do with girls anymore. But you learn to enjoy the journey. But then when you come out of it, maintaining a great physique is so much easier than building one.
Yep, definitely. And that's the thing. It's the first couple of years in fitness, if people approach it with the mindset that, all right, I'm just, shit's not going to go perfectly this first couple of years, but I'm going to learn a ton, and I'll use that experience to go forward once I get to that point. And just it's like for the first couple of years, almost as long as you stick to the basics, it all essentially works. So have some fun with it.
Yeah.
It's like don't stress.
I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I think because your newbie gains are going to last about 6 months, give or take. That seems to be the general. After that, though, if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to plateau.
You can spin your wheels, yeah.
Yeah, if you don't know what you're doing with your diet, if you're training, if you're following, magazine routines that just have you doing a bunch of drop sets and supersets and high rep isolation work, and you're going to plateau. You're not going to see anywhere near the progress that you saw in the first 3 to 6 months. So I think that there is something to say for that.
Like proper programming, yeah.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, it's all I kind of treat it like a video game. Is that at the beginning you're just learning all these. You're like in a newbie zone, so you're learning the fundamentals, and that takes time. You can't rush, and that's what a lot of people want to do. They want results in 8 weeks, 12 weeks.
Yep.
It's like you can't rush the adaptations that need to happen. You can't rush how fast your body's going to lose. Like you can cut your calories all you want, but it might hurt you in the long run because you can't sustain it, and you bounce back because you diet hard for 3 days and then you binge for 4 because that 3 days was so hard versus a moderate deficit for weeks and it goes back to the extremism that is often promoted in fitness. It's like extreme is sexy to people, so they're like, whew, all right, it's extreme, it must work, and they quickly forget that like it's like nothing really, like few things in life are extreme all the time. It's like you're extreme for brief periods, if at all. It's like you don't extremely build a house because that's how the shit falls apart. It's like, oh, you built this house in a day? I don't want to live in that house. And people don't want to hear that. They're like, nope. I heard this dude on the internet. He got results. He was ripped in 8 weeks, and these pictures and these before and afters. Yeah. And it's like they want that, and I'm like, it's not. So just if you come into it with that approach, that's going to take a while. But there's lots of wiggle room and room for you to enjoy it. Like I enjoy one of my favorite styles of training. Just even for me, even though I've been training for years now, it's something I go back to every now and then just to, for a new phase or just to have some fun. Is like escalating density training. So like if I don't feel like doing like 6 or 7 exercises, I'll go in for let's say I pick 2 exercises, alternate back and forth between those 2 for 15 minutes, and then I rest and then do another 2 exercises. And they'll still be the compound lifts, but now I don't have to think much about it all. Like I have a certain rep range I'm aiming for with these 2 exercises. Like let's say I'm doing like chin-ups and then I'm doing rows. I'm like, okay, I do chin-ups and then rows. Let's say I start off trying to get 6 to 8 reps each. And then I just keep going back and forth for that whole time. So if I have energy, I go faster. If I'm a little tired that day, I go slower. But it's fun to me, just that aspect of racing the clock and knowing that the end is in sight. I'm like, oh, thank you, Lord Jesus. It's the workout's almost over, And it adds some novelty into it while still adhering to principles. And that's really when I say bring fun back into it, it's more along the lines of, adhering to the principles that work. But by doing so, you have a lot of methods that you can play around with. It's like, it's like Batman and his utility belt. It's not like he's going around just throwing the batarang? I think
batarang, I think.
Yeah, he's not just doing. That's not his only tool. If it was, he would be a shitty hero. He'd be like, well, this is over.
My batarang failed.
I can't climb the building with my batarang.
I'm going home.
Game over.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, there are many different ways to get results in training. Depends what you want to do with your body, and there are I wouldn't say that everything can work. Obviously, there are certain things that just don't work very well.
Right.
But the goals do matter a lot, though, and it depends. Like if you're new, your goal is to basically build muscle and strength as quickly as possible. Is really what you want to do when you're new. Yep. And then once you've kind of reached the point where you're happy with your size, and you know, by then you're going to be pretty strong. Then you have a lot more wiggle room, as you said, where you can do different things and you can maintain your physique and have more fun with it. I think somebody new, it depends on what they want to do. If having fun for them is more important, then, you know, I totally understand that. But if somebody comes in and they're like, I just want to get big and strong as quickly as possible, then that narrows down their options, you know?
Right, yeah. The more restricted or the more precise the goal, the less wiggle room they have. Yeah, like if someone's like, dude, I just want to work out and have fun. There's so many ways to work out and have fun. If that's what you're trying to get out of, you know, I'm like, people love that, you know? Mm-hmm. and
that's a big draw of it. People go have fun. There's the whole group thing, and you know, you're doing different workouts every day, and there's definitely it has that going for it.
Yep. And you know, here's a question for you, just because I'm curious. Like after, let's say you've been working with someone for a while, and is there any point that you kind of cut them loose and to kind of go off on their own?
Yeah, I mean, I actually don't do any one-on-one. I don't have time for it.
Yep.
Instead I put all my time into writing and just creating content where then people, I mean, I want people to be self-sufficient right from the beginning. And that's my goal with like my books and my website and stuff, is that people that, you know, I've kind of debated even offering custom workout plans, not even a coaching service, so just giving people a workout plan. Because in a lot of cases, like, you know, Bigger, Leaner, Stronger it's a simple but effective program. It focuses on heavy compound lifting. It's great for somebody that's new or new to that style of lifting. If somebody has already put in a couple years of heavy compound lifting, then the next book that I'm releasing is it's going to be really for more advanced weightlifters, people that have built their first 20 to 30 pounds of muscle and have built this and, you know, acquired the strength that comes with it. And that program is a periodized program. It focuses still on the 4 to 6 rep range, but it also includes some powerlifting and hypertrophy stuff. So between those two books and their, you know, respective programs, I really am trying to give people everything that they need to build a great physique, to be strong, to be healthy, and maintain it without ever having to exercise more than like 4 to 6 hours a week. That's kind of like my thing.
Yeah, and what you just said, it goes back to, I think, what we talked about earlier, just about gurus, and that, you know, I think the job of a good coach or just someone that's really putting out quality content is that they're a teacher, and at some point you're guiding people along in a way that, you know, lets them learn about the process as well. For those people that really want to get into like the reason why and that they can get into it. And there's also something to be said for, hey, here's this workout. You don't need to know why it'll work, but for you came to me at this point looking for this goal. This will work for you. Do it. And that alone, like, you're teaching them.
Yeah, totally. And those guys will usually be the ones that will get very fancy with things because they want to try to impress you. That's where you're going to do the anabolic diet of carb cycling, and, you know, you're going to go, IF on this day, and then you're going to carb backload the next day, and then so you feel like, wow, this guy really must know his shit. I'm doing all this weird shit. It must mean something.
Yeah.
When ironically you would, you know, probably just do better with like a standard traditional diet that has you eating, you know, whatever, every few hours you eat a little bit of food and your numbers add up at the end of the day.
Yep. Yeah, and there's so many different ways to go about it, and it's good to have it's good to have teachers, and that's something that I lacked in the beginning. So now that I'm in a position to help people, you know, you really have to have a responsibility. Be like, all right, you know, let me not put out shit, you know, let me not try and misguide people, because there's tons of people making a living off of misinformation, which is unfortunate.
Oh yeah.
So I know, millions.
And that's where
millions.
it becomes, exactly. I mean, it becomes like the more money. There's so much money being spent in this industry. It's a ridiculously huge industry, and it's obviously such a big pain point for people. And people are they want to believe a lot of things too. You know, there's like that suggestibility that comes along with it. So, and if you are unethical, if you're an unethical, intelligent marketer, you can, and I know people, I wouldn't say personally, but I just know through my little travels, I've met various people that are, destroying. I mean, that have made 7, 8 figures in this space over the last few years, and selling garbage. I mean, like there's, the joke is like pills in a bottle, like literally just they don't give a shit, and fake information products, and where it's like, the face of it is just a fake, totally made up thing. And so, when there's that much money, it's going to draw bad people, and that's where and then we have varying degrees of that. I'm talking about like outright scammers, but then the fake gurus kind of fall somewhere there in the middle, I guess.
Yep, and that goes back to what, like, something that I want to talk about in the vein of gurus is I want people, after a certain time, you got to become your own guru in a sense, in that for you after you've been doing this for years. Like if you've been working out for 10, 15 years and you still don't know how to put together a program based off what works on you, I don't know. It's like it's almost you haven't learned anything from what you've gone through. It's like you've always been dependent on someone else to hold you by the hand and give you a program here or there. But after a certain point, you have to take the reins and go, okay, what have I learned from all of this? It would be the equivalent of like going through school, from kindergarten to like 12th grade, graduating, and be like, oh shit, I don't know anything. It's like,
well, that actually happens a lot more often than people are comfortable with admitting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It's like
cool.
Yeah, man, it's a mindset that I just want to share with people. Not like if you're beginning, you need some guidance, you need someone to really guide you through. But after a while, you should have enough experience on your own to where you can start to trust yourself, which is really what it's all about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the criteria that if I were going back and doing it again, knowing at least if I could just tell my old self, because I started training for my first 6 or 7 years, it was a joke. I had no idea what I was doing, and I made terrible gains considering for how much time I put into it. It would have been to, if I could give myself just this is how you find somebody to listen to. It would be, how do they look themselves? Also, drugs come into that. If there's, some people, it can be hard to spot or it can be easy to spot. There are telltale signs, massive shoulders, massive traps, massive upper chest, drugs all the time. I mean, that's just obvious. That very like 3-dimensional kind of look where it looks like they weigh 210, but they weigh 170.
It looks like a video game character.
Yeah, when they're bulking, they're never over 10%, even though they're eating 5,000 calories a day. Insane vascularity, all these things just generally indicate drug use. So that has to be taken into account. But and the problem with drug use is, just so the listeners understand, is that it changes everything. Like if you're on enough drugs, you can basically just go in the gym and get a pump every day, and you grow. Yep. So if that's all that guy knows, if he's been on drugs from the beginning, then he can't really help you, because he's going to tell you to go do that, but he's not going to tell you to do the drugs. He's just going to be like, go in the gym and do like 30 sets of 30 reps and you'll be huge.
Right.
You know what I mean? And in diet, it's like, I don't know, I eat 6,000 calories a day and I never go over 10%. I have good genetics. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So if that's you got to watch out for that. But when you have somebody that's natural, and you'll see that there's a lot more emphasis on food. They're not eating obscene amounts of food every day. Their training is a bit more. My phone is freaking out. Their training is a bit more moderate, less, not super high volume. They're not going to be pounding 8 million reps of workout and stuff. So how do they look themselves? What kind of success stories do they have? Do their clients, they're the people, readers, whatever, are these real people, or is it these ridiculous, 2-month transformations where a person went from like 20% to 5%?
Yep.
Don't be inspired by those transformations. There's a lot more going on than what they're telling you.
Magic.
Yeah, exactly. And then like I said, showing that they understand the scientific side matters a lot. At least it matters to me. It shows that they take it seriously enough to become a student of and actually get really educated And I don't know, am I forgetting anything? Would you like to add anything else on that, and how you think people should, decide whether they should listen to someone or not?
Yeah, it's like if you're applying for a job, you want some references. I would ask, like, okay, so do you have any like testimonials? Can I talk to some of your former clients?
Yeah.
That's really a good sign, because like if one of my clients wouldn't recommend me and they got good results, or if they got shitty results, there's a reason they didn't recommend me. So, whatever I say wouldn't really help determine. It would be better coming from, someone else that worked with me and had success, and go, hey, they can vouch for me. They were in your position at once, and I helped take them from this point to that point. That right there would be, if they don't have any, or they don't want to be willing to put you in contact with them, or at least reach out to their former client or current client and say, hey, someone's interested. That's a red flag. It's just like, I don't know.
No, I agree. I would actually, I would just move on. I mean, that's like, that pretty much says everything right there.
Mm-hmm. And really, I would just take your time. Don't rush into signing up with someone. Get a sense of, since people are so vocal on social media and their blogs, you can really get a sense of someone and kind of what their angle is, or if they have your best interest in mind, if you take enough time to just read what they're saying or read between the lines, So I would just say take your time and just, spend some time chatting with them. They won't be, we're all busy, but if they're genuinely interested in helping you, they won't mind answering questions that they should be able to answer from prospective clients.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Word up.
Cool.
Oof.
Cool. Well, it's great. A lot of good stuff covered. So let's just close with where can listeners find you at? Anything else you'd like to share with them?
Yeah, just check me out at roglawfitness.com, and also,
and that's roglawfitness.com.
Yep, roglawfitness.com, and then facebook.com/roglawfitness. That, if you like laughing, I put some fitness stuff up there too, but it's a lot of lifestyle and just jokes and just, people need to be happy. So feel free to follow me there too. Shoot me a message, email. Always happy to chat or answer any questions. So do not be shy. I am a real person. I do respond to emails.
Yeah, me too. I respond to everything myself, and emails, messages. It's something I wouldn't turn that over to an assistant, just because I think it's important to keep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me, Mike. This is great.